My parents gave my $120,000 college fund to my brother's drug habit, then asked me to pay for his rehab. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Lane Carter, and I used to believe that if you did everything right, worked hard, stayed kind, followed the rules, life would reward you. Turns out I was wrong. All my life, I was the quiet one, the one who got straight A's, never missed curfew, and dreamed about becoming a veterinarian. My parents, Mark and Dana Carter, always said, "We're proud of you, sweetheart. That college fund is waiting when you're ready." They started it when I was a kid. Every time I got an award or saved money from my part-time jobs, Mom would smile and say, "It's going toward your future." Then there was my brother, Cole. He's 4 years older and has been in and out of trouble since high school. Drugs, fights, rehab, you name it. Somehow, every time he messed up, our parents found a way to forgive him. I used to admire that kind of love. Now, I see it was blindness. It happened 2 weeks after my 21st birthday. I was sitting at the kitchen table with college brochures spread out like puzzle pieces. I was ready to apply to Oregon State's veterinary program. When I asked Mom for the bank details to pay the first tuition deposit, she froze. Dad looked at the floor. "What's wrong?" I asked. They shared one of those silent looks parents give when they know they've done something bad. Then Dad cleared his throat. "Lane, we had to use your college fund." Cole relapsed again. The rehab center wouldn't take him without payment up front. I laughed at first because I thought he was joking. But when I saw Mom's red eyes, the truth hit me like ice water. "You used my fund? That was my future." Mom's voice cracked. "Honey, he's your brother. Family helps family. You can always take student loans. Cole might not survive this one." I remember standing there, hands shaking so hard I had to grip the counter to stay steady. "You're saying his addiction is more important than my life?" Dad sighed, frustrated. "Don't make this about you, Lane. We're all hurting." That's when I realized I wasn't part of their we. I was just the backup plan, the dependable one they could drain without asking. That night, I sat in my car outside the house, watching the porch light flicker. I kept thinking about all the times I stayed home while they rushed to hospitals for Cole. Every promise, every "we're so proud of you" suddenly felt like a lie. I wasn't angry yet, just hollow. But under that emptiness, something new began to form. A spark. A thought I'd never had before. If they could take everything from me without guilt, maybe I didn't owe them anything either. Maybe the good kid in me had finally died. And maybe that was the beginning of something stronger. When I think back, it feels like I was born into a job, not a family. From the time I could walk, I was cleaning up after Cole, spilled drinks, broken things, his messes after he'd stormed off. My parents called it bad luck, like his temper and addictions were some curse none of us could control. But somehow, I was always the one holding the broom. Dad would sigh and say, "Your brother's going through a rough patch." Mom would add, "You're so patient, Lane. You understand." And I did, at least I thought I did. I believed being the good daughter meant carrying the weight no one else could. At 15, I got my first job at a small animal clinic after school. I'd mop floors, feed stray kittens, and save every dollar. When I told Mom I wanted to help add to the college fund, she hugged me tight and whispered, "You don't have to, sweetheart. But if you do, it'll be waiting for you one day." That promise stayed with me through every late shift. Every Saturday I skipped hanging out with friends. I saw the fund as more than money. It was a way out. A promise that hard work could buy peace. I pictured myself at Oregon State University, studying veterinary science, finally living somewhere no one knew me as Cole's sister. The thought used to keep me steady when things got loud at home. The noise was constant. Arguments that started small, unpaid bills, broken curfew, always turned into screaming matches about how Cole just needed another chance. I'd sit on the stairs, trying not to breathe too loud, afraid they'd remember I existed. Then, like clockwork, Mom would come upstairs later, knock softly, and tell me how proud she was that I didn't cause trouble. I used to feel special when she said that. Now it sounds like a curse. One night, after a particularly bad fight, I found Cole passed out in the living room. Mom was crying, Dad pacing. I cleaned up the glass before they even noticed. I remember thinking, if I fix this one more time, maybe things will finally get better. But they never did. When they took my college fund, it didn't just break something inside me. It revealed what had already been broken for years. Sitting in my car that night, I saw everything clearly for the first time. Every time they said, "We're proud of you," what they meant was, "You're easy to forget." Every time they said, "We're doing our best," what they meant was, "You'll survive without us." Tears kept coming, but I didn't try to stop them. I wasn't crying for the money. I was crying because I finally understood the truth. I was never going to be treated like their equal. Love in our house wasn't shared. It was traded, and I'd run out of things to give. By sunrise, my decision was made. I packed what I could fit in my car, 2 duffel bags, a blanket, and a few college brochures, and started the engine. I didn't tell them I was leaving. I didn't leave a note. That was the last morning I called that place home. The apartment smelled like burnt coffee and cheap detergent, but it was mine. A single room with peeling wallpaper, a creaky window, and a bathroom that hissed every time you turned on the tap. I shared it with Mara, a nursing student from my job at the clinic. She was sharp, sarcastic, and never afraid to tell a man off. When I moved in with 2 duffel bags and a pillow, she grinned and said, "Welcome to freedom, kid. It's ugly, but it's honest." Freedom didn't feel like much at first. It felt like exhaustion. I picked up every extra shift I could at the clinic, morning, evening, weekend. My hands stayed rough from scrubbing kennels, and my back ached from lifting dogs twice my size. But I needed the noise, the work, the movement. If I stopped, I'd start thinking about them again. It didn't take long before the calls started. First Mom, then Dad. Always the same soft tone that used to calm me down when I was little. "Lane, we didn't have a choice. You'll understand one day. Family sacrifices, sweetheart." I said nothing. Just listened to the silence after their words, then hung up. They never once said sorry. Not once. After the 3rd call, I stopped answering altogether. That's when Cole showed up. It was late, maybe 11. I heard a knock, opened the door, and there he was, thin, glassy-eyed, shaking. His smile looked like a crack in stone. "Hey, sis," he said, voice slurred. "I'm clean this time. I'll pay you back someday, promise." Behind him, the hallway reeked of cigarettes and rain. I wanted to slam the door, but something in me froze. I looked at him, my brother who had taken everything from me, and saw a stranger. I handed him a 50 from my pocket and told him to leave. He laughed, said, "You always were the rich one." Then he stumbled down the stairs and disappeared into the dark. That night, I couldn't sleep. Mara found me at the kitchen table with my laptop open, scrolling through old messages. She didn't ask questions, just poured 2 mugs of coffee and sat beside me. "You look like someone plotting a murder," she joked. I gave a tired smile. "Something like that." I started gathering everything, screenshots of texts, copies of my bank statements, anything that showed what they'd done. Every lie, every signature, every transfer. I wanted proof. Not because I didn't believe myself, but because I needed to see it in black and white. Evidence that I wasn't crazy. Evidence that love shouldn't look like theft. Days blurred together. Work, coffee, silence. I stopped checking my phone. My parents' numbers lit up the screen less and less, until they stopped calling completely. Maybe they'd finally realized I wasn't their safety net anymore. One night, after finishing a 12-hour shift, I sat by the window watching rain smear the streetlights outside. My reflection looked older somehow, harder. I whispered to it, almost without meaning to, "You want to play family?" A long pause. Then a small, cold smile. "Let's see how much it costs." It started with a folder of bank statements spread across my small kitchen table. I'd been staring at them for hours, trying to understand how something meant for me had disappeared so neatly. Each page showed the same thing, a balance dropping in chunks until nothing was left. Then one transfer caught my eye. My name was printed beside a signature I didn't remember writing. The curve of the L was wrong. The slant of the Carter tilted left instead of right. My stomach turned cold. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. They hadn't just taken my money. They'd forged my name to do it. For a long time, I just sat there. The room was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I thought about calling them, demanding answers, but I knew how that conversation would go. Excuses, guilt, gaslighting. It would all end with me feeling smaller than when it began. I was done feeling small. The next morning at work, I told Mara what I'd found. She stopped typing, looked at me, and said, "You need a lawyer." "I know someone." She scribbled a name and number on a scrap of paper and pushed it toward me. "He's smart, quiet, and doesn't ask stupid questions. Go see him." That afternoon, I found myself outside a modest office building downtown. The door read Eli Warren, attorney at law. Inside, everything smelled like old paper and lemon polish. Eli was younger than I expected, mid-30s maybe, calm eyes, steady voice. He listened without interrupting as I laid out the story. The fund, the forged signature, the money gone. When I finished, he leaned back and folded his hand. "You're sure this is your name on the transfer?" "Yes." "And you didn't sign it?" "No." He nodded slowly. "Then Lane, this isn't just wrong. It's illegal. What they did counts as forgery and misappropriation of funds. You have a case, civil and criminal, if you want to pursue it." The word criminal hit me like a slap. I thought of my parents, Mom's tired face, Dad's lectures about integrity. Taking them to court felt like burning down my entire life. But another part of me, the part that had been bruised too many times, whispered that maybe the fire was already burning, and I was just the last to notice. Eli's voice broke through my thoughts. "You don't have to decide today," he said gently. "But if you want justice, I can help you get it." Justice. The word tasted strange. It wasn't revenge, not exactly. It was survival. Proof that I wasn't crazy for wanting fairness. Proof that love shouldn't come with signatures forged in secret. I looked at the stack of documents on his desk. My name scrawled across lies someone else had written. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't. Eli, I said quietly, the air between us sharp as glass. Let's do it. He nodded once, his expression unreadable. And just like that, the first move had been made. The day the papers were served was colder than I expected, a sharp wind cutting through early morning silence. I watched from across the street as a courier in a navy jacket walked up the front steps of my parents' house. He rang the bell, handed over a thick envelope, and left without a word. I thought I'd feel guilty. I didn't. I just felt steady. A few hours later, my phone started buzzing nonstop. First Mom, then Dad. I let them ring until the voicemail box filled up. When I finally answered, Mom's voice came through shaky and furious. Lane, how could you do this to us? To your own family? You're heartless. I stared out the window of my tiny apartment, watching leaves tumble across the sidewalk. You forged my name, Mom. You stole from me. What did you expect? She gasped like I'd hit her. We did it for your brother. You'll understand when you're a parent. Dad's voice came next, rough and angry. You're ruining us, Lane. We're family. You don't drag your own through the mud. For a moment, I almost said I didn't want to ruin anyone. But then I remembered standing in that same kitchen, hearing them tell me my future was gone. Whatever family we were ended that day. I hung up. The next morning, my car window was smashed. Glass glittered across the seat like ice. Someone had keyed the word traitor into the door. I didn't need a detective to know who'd done it. Later that night, the banging started. I opened the door to see Cole, swaying, eyes bloodshot. You think this makes you better than us? He shouted, waving his arms. You think you can destroy our family and just walk away? His breath stank of alcohol and sweat. You took everything from me. You're trying to destroy us. I stepped back, my heart pounding but my face calm. You destroyed yourself, Cole. He lunged toward me, knocking over a plant and shattering the pot. Mara ran from her room, phone already in hand. You need to leave right now, she said, voice sharp as steel. When he didn't, she called the police. The sirens came fast, red and blue, washing over the apartment walls. I watched from the doorway as they cuffed him, his curses echoing down the hall. He kicked at the ground, yelling my name like it was venom. One of the officers asked if I wanted to press charges. I nodded. Yes. My voice didn't shake. When they drove him away, the street fell quiet again. Mara put a hand on my shoulder, but I didn't move. I looked at the broken glass scattered under the streetlights and felt a stillness I hadn't known in months. For the first time, there was no guilt, no ache, no trembling. Just a calm, icy certainty settling deep inside me. Cold relief. That was all that was left. The news spread faster than wildfire in a dry field. Within a week, everyone in our small Oregon town knew my name wasn't just whispered with pride anymore. It was tangled in gossip. At the clinic, I caught the looks. Coworkers stopped mid-conversation when I walked in. Clients stared too long, pretending they'd seen my face somewhere. Some offered tight, pitying smiles. Others just whispered. Everywhere I went, I could feel it, the question behind their eyes. Who sues their own parents? Even Mara started warning me to brace for more. Small towns love two things, she said, stirring her coffee. Praise and scandal. You used to be one, now you're the other. She wasn't wrong. The first call came from Mom, voice trembling. Lane, please. You don't understand what this is doing to us. Your father's barely sleeping. I know, I said quietly. I've been there before. The next day, Dad called. We can fix this before the hearing. Just drop the charges. We'll talk it out as a family. His tone almost cracked through my anger. Almost. Talking never fixed anything, I replied. You only listen when it costs you something. Then I hung up before he could answer. Still, that night, the guilt crept in like fog under a door. I kept replaying old memories, trying to find one that didn't hurt. That's when I saw it, Cole's face pale and still, the night he overdosed. I was 16. Mom had found him on the bathroom floor, barely breathing. Dad shouted for help, and I froze until the paramedics arrived. When they loaded him onto the stretcher, his hand dangled off the side. I remember grabbing it, terrified it would go cold. I whispered, please don't die. Please. That was the night I learned what real fear felt like, the kind that sticks to your ribs. Back then, I thought love meant saving him, no matter what it cost me. Now, years later, sitting in a silent apartment filled with paperwork and broken trust, I couldn't stop wondering if I'd become what I once hated, cold, detached, unforgiving. Was I really seeking justice, or just trying to hurt them back? The thought made my chest ache. I looked at the court summons lying on the table. My parents' names printed beside mine looked like strangers. When the guilt got too loud, I went to see Eli. He was in his office, surrounded by neatly stacked files, glasses low on his nose. I told him everything, about the calls, the gossip, the memories I couldn't shake. He listened quietly, tapping a pen against his desk. When I finished, I expected advice, maybe comfort. Instead, he leaned forward, calm but firm. "Lane," he said, "justice isn't cruelty. It's clarity." The words settled like stones in my chest. Simple, unshakable. I left his office and walked home under the gray Oregon sky. The whispers, the guilt, the memories, they followed me. But underneath them all, something steadier pulsed. Clarity. For the first time, I finally understood what that meant. The courthouse smelled faintly of dust and old wood, like time itself had been trapped in the walls. My palms were damp, and I could hear the echo of my own heartbeat as I followed Eli through the narrow hallway. I hadn't seen my parents in months. I thought I'd be ready. I wasn't. When they entered, the air shifted. Mom looked smaller than I remembered, her hair pulled tight, her eyes dark from sleepless nights. Dad walked behind her, jaw clenched, pretending to be unshaken. They didn't look at me. Not once. Eli leaned toward me, voice low. "Remember, truth speaks louder than emotion. Let the evidence do the work." I nodded, though my stomach felt like lead. When the session began, Eli moved with the precision of a surgeon. He laid out every document, every transaction. The judge leaned forward as the screen displayed the scanned copy of the transfer slip, my name scribbled in that false, tilted hand. Eli's voice stayed calm, but every word cut cleanly through the air. "This signature," he said, "is not my client's. It was used to authorize a transfer of $120,000 without her consent." Mom's hands twisted in her lap. Dad shifted in his seat, eyes darting toward the papers. The silence that followed felt endless. Finally, the judge turned to my father. "Mr. Carter, did you authorize this transfer?" Dad's lips parted, but no sound came out. His shoulders sagged as if the weight of every lie had finally caught up. We just wanted to help our son," he muttered. Eli pressed gently. "By committing fraud against your daughter?" Dad's voice cracked. "She's our child too. We thought she'd understand." When Mom took the stand, she didn't cry. She turned her anger into performance. "We did it for family," she shouted, voice trembling. "For love. You think a number in a bank matters more than saving your brother's life." Her words echoed through the courtroom, but no one answered. The judge's face didn't change. The evidence spoke louder than her excuses. When the verdict came, the room felt both silent and deafening. The judge's voice was steady. "The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Lane Carter. The defendants are ordered to repay the funds in full, with partial asset seizure until the balance is met." Mom covered her face with her hand. Dad just stared at the floor. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel victory. Just a hollow quiet that reached down to my bone. Outside the courtroom, the hallway buzzed with voices, but I barely heard them. I walked toward the exit, my steps slow, the air heavy with everything that couldn't be undone. Then I saw Cole. 2 officers were leading him past me, wrists cuffed, eyes sunken. For a second, our gazes met, his full of venom, mine empty. He didn't say a word, but the message was clear. In his mind, I'd betrayed them all. As he passed, I felt nothing. No rage, no sorrow. Just the faint chill of a family finally broken, and the silence that follows truth when it's spoken aloud. The check came in the mail on a gray morning that smelled like rain. I sat at the kitchen table staring at it, the numbers clear, final. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival written in ink. I deposited the money the next day and registered for classes at the community college near the university. Not the dream I once had, but a start. For the first time in years, the future belonged to me again. I found a small apartment a few blocks from campus. It was quiet, sunlit in the mornings, with a cracked balcony rail and just enough space for one person and a little bit of hope. A week after moving in, I went to the shelter where I used to volunteer. That's where I met Junie, a nervous brown mutt with uneven ears and eyes that followed me everywhere. When I opened her cage, she leaned her head into my palm and sighed. I took her home that same day. Life became simple: classes, work, walks with Junie through the park behind my building. But the nights were harder. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart racing, hearing echoes that weren't real. My mother crying. My father shouting my name. Cole's voice, slurred and angry, telling me I'd destroyed the family. The silence that followed always felt heavier than the noise. Sometimes I'd call Eli, never to talk about the case, just life. He'd answer late, usually still at the office, calm as ever. He didn't fill the silence with advice or pity. He just listened. We started meeting for coffee on Sundays, sitting outside while Junie lay at my feet. He was the first person in years who didn't want anything from me. That kind of peace felt unfamiliar, almost fragile. One afternoon, between classes, I drove out of town. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, but I knew the way by heart. The road curved past old pine trees, the same ones I used to count on car rides home from school. The house came into view, and for a moment, I thought I'd made a mistake. The paint was peeling, the porch sagging, and the windows boarded. The yard that once held our family barbecues was overgrown with weeds. A foreclosure notice hung crookedly on the door. I stood there for a long time, Junie sniffing the air beside me. Every corner of that place held a memory I no longer wanted: birthdays, fights, promises that never meant what they should have. The wind rattled a loose gutter, a soft metallic sound like a whisper. From my pocket, I pulled a small folded note I'd written the night before. My handwriting looked steadier than I felt. I placed it on the porch step, weighed it down with a pebble, and turned to leave. As I reached the car, I looked back one last time. The house didn't look like home anymore. It looked like something I'd finally outgrown. The note stayed behind, plain and simple, the only words I had left to give them. I forgive you, but I'll never come back. A year passed quietly, the kind of quiet that doesn't demand attention but fills every corner of life. My days settled into rhythm: classes, clinic shifts, evenings spent walking Junie through the park. The past had faded into something distant, almost weightless. Then one afternoon, as I was locking up my apartment, a voice stopped me. "Lane." I turned, and there he was. Cole. He looked thinner, paler, but clearer somehow. His eyes weren't glassy, his hands steady. For a second, I almost didn't recognize him. "I'm not here to fight," he said quickly, hands raised like a surrender. "I just wanted to talk." I hesitated, then nodded toward the bench near the parking lot. We sat, a gulf of unspoken things stretching between us. He spoke first. "I'm in a state rehab program now. 6 months clean." His voice cracked on the last word. "They helped me see how bad it got. What I did to you. What they did." He rubbed his hands together, staring at the ground. "Mom and Dad used me, Lane. Every time I messed up, they'd say they were saving me, but they were really using me to keep control. You were the only one who didn't need saving, and they hated that." His honesty stung more than his lies ever did. I wanted to believe him, but the part of me that once rushed to fix things stayed silent. He looked up, eyes shining. "I'm sorry. For everything. For the car, for the money, for all of it. His voice broke. "I just want my sister back." The words hung in the air, trembling. I looked at him, really looked. The boy who once terrified me, who'd shouted in my face and shattered glass like it meant nothing, now sat small and shaking. But pity wasn't what I felt. It was clarity. "Cole," I said softly, "I hope you stay clean. I hope you mean what you said. But I'm not your rehab. You can fix yourself, or you can fall again. Either way, it's not on me." He blinked, as if the words hit harder than he expected. A single tear rolled down his cheek, and he wiped it away quickly, embarrassed. "You really don't need me anymore, huh?" I shook my head. "I never did. I just didn't know it." He stood, trying to smile but failing. "I'll go then. I just wanted you to know I'm trying." I watched him walk away, shoulders slumped, disappearing down the street until he turned the corner and was gone. For once, I didn't chase after him. I didn't call his name. I just sat there with the sound of Junie's leash jingling softly beside me and the late sun slipping below the building. When I went back upstairs, I took my phone from the counter. I scrolled through the contact list: Mom, Dad, numbers that hadn't rung in months. My thumb hovered for only a second before pressing delete. One name, then another, until the screen was clean. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peace, quiet, complete. The years unfolded softly, like pages turning in a book I never thought I'd get to finish. The girl who once sat in a car outside her parents' house, shaking and lost, had become Dr. Lane Carter, a name that felt both new and earned. The clinic I worked for eventually became mine, a small building with pale blue walls and the constant hum of content animals. Each morning started the same. I'd unlock the glass door, flip the sign to open, and be greeted by the smell of coffee and disinfectant. My patients ranged from nervous cats to lumbering old dogs, and they all trusted me without question. That quiet trust became my anchor. In every wagging tail and soft purr, I found something my family never gave me: unconditional acceptance. People in town knew me now not for scandal or courtroom gossip, but for gentle hands and long hours. "Dr. Carter," they'd say, "you've got a gift." I'd smile, thank them, and move on. I didn't need to explain what it cost to earn that calm. Eli still checked in once a year, usually dropping by with his dog for a checkup. We didn't talk about the past. There was nothing left to dissect. Sometimes he'd stay for coffee, and we'd sit in comfortable silence. Two people who had learned that peace doesn't come loud. It arrives quiet and steady. My parents never called again. I stopped expecting them to. A neighbor once mentioned seeing the old house listed at auction, its paint stripped by years of neglect. I didn't ask who bought it. Some things were better left to time. Cole, I heard, moved to another state. Rumor said he was working construction, maybe clean, maybe not. I didn't try to find out. Forgiveness, I'd learned, didn't require reunion. It only needed distance. Every so often, when I locked the clinic late at night, I'd catch my reflection in the glass. older, steadier, eyes clear. The ghosts of who I'd been were still there, but they no longer haunted me. They'd become part of the foundation beneath everything I'd built. One winter evening, after a long day of surgeries, I turned off the lights and stepped outside. The street was quiet, dusted with snow. Junie, older now, waited patiently by the door, her leash coiled in my hand. I looked up at the dark sky and felt the stillness I used to chase finally settle around me. I thought about all the versions of myself that had carried me here. The scared teenager, the furious daughter, the woman who learned that justice wasn't about winning, but about reclaiming what was stolen: dignity, peace, self-worth. I locked the door, the key clicking softly, and whispered to no one but the cold night air. This was my justice. No applause, no audience, just the quiet hum of the world continuing on, indifferent yet vast. It wasn't happiness exactly, but something deeper: completion. The kind that doesn't fade. Do you think I made the right choice by walking away from my family, or should I have given them another chance? Tell me your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like mine.